My name is Eliza Carter, and I want to tell you something most people never say out loud. Sometimes the smartest thing a woman can do is let a man believe he has already won. Not because she is weak, not because she is afraid, but because she knows something he doesn't. She knows that pride, real pride, the kind that makes a man stop reading paperwork, stop asking questions, stop looking carefully at the numbers. That kind of pride is the most dangerous weapon you can ever turn against someone. I learned that lesson over 15 years of marriage, 15 years of watching, 15 years of understanding how Daniel Carter's mind worked, and 2 years of waiting, very, very patiently, for the moment he would finally hand me everything I needed. That moment came on a Tuesday morning, inside a courtroom that smelled like old wood and quiet tension. I sat across the table from the man who had once promised to love me forever. He was smiling, he was relaxed, he thought he had won. He had not read the papers carefully enough. And when his lawyer finally leaned over and whispered the truth into his ear, I watched 15 years of confidence collapse in about 4 seconds. This is that story. I met Daniel when I was 19 years old. He was 24, loud in all the ways that feel exciting when you are young, full of plans bigger than anything he could afford, and he told stories about his future as though they were already true. He said he would build homes people dreamed about. He said he would be somebody. He said he would take care of me forever. I believed him, not because he was rich, not because he was powerful. I believed him because when he looked at me, I felt like the most important person in any room. That feeling, when you are 19 and a little lost, is worth more than money. We married 1 year later. A small ceremony, folding chairs and borrowed flowers. A hall that cost less than his first gold watch would later cost. We had almost nothing, but we had each other, and we had hope, and for a while, that was enough. I worked at a small accounting office downtown. Daniel worked construction during the day and drew up business plans at night on our kitchen table. I helped him organize the numbers. I kept his finances on track. I was the quiet engine behind everything he was building. Back then, he knew it. Back then, he was grateful. The business grew slowly at first and then all at once. 1 project became 2. 2 became 5. 5 became 20. People started talking about Daniel Carter the way people talk about someone they admire from a distance. They called him talented. They called him self-made. They called him a visionary. And every single time someone said those words, I would smile quietly and think about the spreadsheets, the ones I built from scratch, the ones I stayed up until midnight maintaining, the ones that kept his business from collapsing in those first 2 fragile years when 1 bad month could have ended everything. Nobody saw those spreadsheets. Nobody asked about them. Success rewrites history that way. Once a man is admired, people forget the hands that held him up while he was climbing. They only see the height. I did not resent it, not then. I loved Daniel. I was proud of what we had built together, even if only I knew it was together. But something was changing. Slowly. The way water changes the shape of a stone, you do not notice it day by day. You only notice it when you reach for the stone and realize it is no longer what it used to be. Daniel was becoming someone else, and I was becoming invisible. It happened in small ways at first. He stopped asking how my day went, stopped noticing the small things, a new haircut, a dinner I had spent 2 hours cooking, a worry I was carrying quietly. Then came the late nights. Important meetings, he said, important clients, important opportunities that could not wait. I believed him, because I had always believed him. Then he bought the watch. $43,000, more than our first car had cost. He said it was necessary. To look the part. To be taken seriously. I said nothing. I smiled. I told him it looked wonderful, because that was who I had become. The woman who supported everything and questioned nothing. At the events he now attended regularly, people shook his hand and praised him. They laughed at his jokes, they asked for his advice. I stood beside him in my good dress, smiling at the right moments, saying very little. He stopped introducing me. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just gradually. I stopped being someone he felt the need to mention. I was furniture. Beautiful furniture, perhaps, but furniture nonetheless. And somewhere during those years, I stopped asking myself what I needed, because I had spent so long focused entirely on what he needed, that I had almost forgotten I was a person too. He told me on a Monday evening. I was making dinner. Pasta, his favorite, the kind with the sauce that takes 40 minutes to get right. He stood in the kitchen doorway, hands in his pockets, and he said, "I want a divorce." Just like that. No warning, no apology, no softness of any kind. I turned off the stove. I set down the wooden spoon, and I waited for him to say something else. He did. "I'll keep the house," he said, "and the company. It just makes sense." Makes sense. Like 15 years of a life together was a logistical problem he had already solved. I felt something inside me go very quiet. Not numb, quiet. Like the moment just before a storm, when the birds stop singing and the air goes completely still. I did not scream, beg, nor collapse. I simply nodded. He looked almost surprised, like he had prepared for a fight and found an empty room instead. He went to sleep in the guest room that night. I went back to the kitchen. I finished the pasta, sat at the table alone, and ate every single bite, because I needed to think. And thinking required fuel. 3 days after he told me, I saw her. She was sitting in the passenger seat of Daniel's car, parked outside a restaurant across town. Young, confident, the kind of beautiful that is also somehow careless. He opened her door. She touched his arm as she stepped out, easy and familiar. The way you touch someone when touching them has already become a habit. He laughed at something she said. It was a laugh I had not heard in 3 years. Open, unguarded. The laugh of a man who felt safe. I sat in my own car across the street and understood everything in about 30 seconds. This had not started recently. The late nights, the distance, the way he had looked at me for the past 2 years like I was something in his way. The divorce had started long before he told me. I had simply been the last to know. I drove home slowly. I did not cry. Not because I was not hurting, I was hurting enormously. But underneath the hurt, something harder and quieter was forming. Something that would take 2 years to fully build. Something he would never see coming. Because the woman he thought he knew, that quiet, invisible woman, was not the woman sitting in that car. She was something else entirely. 2 years before Daniel asked for the divorce, something happened that he never knew about. It started with a number. One transfer in the business accounts, small enough to overlook, unusual enough to catch my attention. Then another. Then 3 more within the same week. I had helped with the bookkeeping in the early years, and even though Daniel had hired an accountant long since, I still had access to certain statements. Old passwords he had never thought to change. I followed the trail quietly. Late at night, alone at the kitchen table, while he was at his important meetings. What I found made my hands go cold. Private loans, second mortgages on properties I had not known about. Lines of credit stretched to their absolute limit. Debt, so much debt. More than the business was actually earning, more than the house was worth. Daniel was not building wealth, he was borrowing the appearance of it. He was paying interest on his own image. The man they called self-made, the visionary, the success story, was standing on a platform built entirely from money he did not have, borrowed from people who would eventually want it back. My hands trembled. Then they steadied. I told no one. The decision to say nothing was the hardest I have ever made. Every instinct I had told me to confront him. To sit across the table and say, I know what you are hiding. I know what this empire is actually built on. I know the truth. But I did not. Because I understood something important in that cold, quiet moment at the kitchen table. If I confronted Daniel then, he would protect himself. He would move things. He would restructure. He would lawyer up immediately and make sure that when the marriage ended, and some part of me already knew it would end, I would receive as little as legally possible. Men like Daniel, men who are skilled at controlling a narrative, are most dangerous when they feel cornered. So I did not corner him. I smiled and continued being the quiet, supportive wife. I attended events and stood at his side. I asked nothing and demanded nothing, and privately, carefully, I began to prepare. I opened a separate bank account, in my name only. I transferred my inheritance there. Money from my grandmother, left to me before we married, money that had always legally been mine. It was enough to matter, and it was completely safe. I saved everything. Every loan document I could find, every statement, every signature, every agreement showing exactly how much Daniel owed and to whom. I printed hard copies. I stored them in a place Daniel had no reason to look. I made digital backups on a drive he did not know existed. I did it slowly, over months, gathering evidence the way you gather anything precious, carefully, without rushing, without dropping a single piece. Daniel never noticed. He was too busy performing, too busy being admired, too busy pretending the empire was real to notice the woman quietly mapping its foundations. He trusted his illusion too completely. That is the thing about pride at a certain level. It becomes a blindfold. He was so certain he controlled everything, so certain I was too passive to be dangerous, so certain he already knew the ending of this story, that he stopped watching. And I kept watching. I watched the debt grow. I watched the lenders send increasingly formal letters. I watched the business pull from one account to fill another, the way you rob Peter to pay Paul until Peter also runs out. I watched, and I waited. I let him believe the chess game had not yet begun. It had. He just did not know he was playing. When Daniel told me he wanted a divorce, I was not surprised. I had been expecting it for almost a year. What surprised me was how confident he was, how completely certain that he had control of every variable. He canceled my credit cards within a week. He changed the passwords on the joint accounts. He moved money into structures he thought I could not trace. Just for clarity during the process, he said smoothly. Like clarity was the reason. Like he was doing me a favor. I said nothing. I called my lawyer. Her name was Patricia Dowd, and she had been recommended to me by a friend 8 months before Daniel ever said the word divorce, because I had wanted to be ready. Patricia listened to everything I had, the documents, the statements, the loan agreements, the full financial picture. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Eliza, do you understand what you have here? I said that I thought I did. She said, this changes everything. I told her I knew that too. Then I told her my plan. She looked at me the way people look at someone when they suddenly realize the person they thought they understood is operating on a completely different level. She agreed to everything. He moved Ava into the house 3 weeks later. I was still living there. We had agreed I would stay until the settlement was finalized, and Daniel, in his confidence, had not thought carefully about what it might mean to share a house with the woman he was divorcing while installing a new girlfriend into it. He introduced her casually. This is Ava. She smiled at me, the smile of someone who has already decided she is won. I smiled back, polite and warm. completely unreadable. I watched her move through my kitchen, fingers trailing along the countertops, opening cabinets with quiet approval, already measuring what she would change, already imagining the version she would create. I felt something. Of course I did. I am human, but underneath the feeling, there was something steadier. A knowledge. She was walking through a house built entirely on debt. She was touching countertops paid for with borrowed money. She was smiling at a man who was one missed payment away from a call that would end the illusion entirely. She did not know that. He did not know I knew it. Neither of them did. And I was not going to tell either of them. Not yet. Daniel's formal offer arrived through his lawyers on a Thursday afternoon. Patricia called me immediately. "He's offering you a cash settlement," she said. "Modest, fixed amount, nothing else." "And he keeps?" I asked. "Everything," she said. "The house, the business, all vehicles, all properties." There was a pause. "Eliza," she said carefully, "my professional advice is to counter immediately. You are entitled to far more than this." I asked her to give me 24 hours. She agreed reluctantly. I sat with the offer overnight. I read it several times. I thought about Daniel signing it, satisfied, certain he had boxed me into a corner. He had given me a small, clean exit because he wanted me gone quickly, quietly, without complications. He was not thinking about liability. He was thinking about victory. The next morning, I called Patricia. "I want to accept it," I said. She was silent for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Patricia?" "I heard you," she said slowly. "Are you certain?" "Yes," I said, "but I need the agreement language to be very specific. Every asset he is claiming listed in full, and every liability attached to those assets confirmed as his responsibility." Another pause. Then she said, "Oh." And I knew she finally understood. The paperwork took 3 weeks to prepare. Patricia was meticulous. Every property listed, every business asset named, every vehicle, account, and holding detailed with the precision of someone who has read every loan document. Daniel's lawyers reviewed it. They were good lawyers. Expensive lawyers. The kind you hire when you are certain you are winning. But they were reviewing a document they believed was straightforward. A woman accepting less than she deserved. A quick, clean settlement. Nothing worth scrutinizing deeply. They missed it. Or rather, they saw what they expected to see, which is the most dangerous kind of blindness. They sent back minor notes, adjusted 2 clauses, approved the rest. Daniel signed quickly. Patricia told me later he had not asked for a single clarification. He had waived the standard due diligence window because he was in a hurry, because he was confident. He was certain he had already won. He signed a document that gave him everything he wanted. His name on the house, his name on the company, his name on every asset, and buried in the language and the sections he had not read, his name on every liability too. Every loan, every second mortgage, every line of credit stretched beyond its limit, all of it, his, completely, legally and irrevocably. The morning of the court date, I woke before sunrise. I lay in the small apartment I had rented 2 weeks earlier, listening to the city begin to wake up outside my window. It was a modest place. 1 bedroom, simple furniture, nothing impressive, but it was mine. Only mine. And there was something about that, something I had not felt in a very long time, that made it feel like the most valuable place on earth. I got dressed carefully, not dramatically, not to impress or intimidate. I chose clothes that said simply, "I am someone who is completely at peace." Because I was. I had not slept well in years, not truly well. Not the deep, unworried sleep of someone with nothing to hide and nothing to fear. But the night before the court date, I slept for 8 full hours. I arrived at the courthouse early. Patricia was already there. She squeezed my hand once, firmly. She said nothing else. Because there was nothing else to say. Everything was already done. The paperwork was signed. The truth was in place. All that remained was for Daniel to finally read what he had agreed to. And understand it. Daniel walked into the courtroom like a man who had already been told the ending of a movie and was only here to watch it play out. Relaxed shoulders, expensive suit, the faint smile of someone who has never genuinely doubted himself. He glanced at me briefly. A look that said, "I hope you are not going to make this difficult." I gave him nothing back. No anger, no fear, just calm. He sat across the table and set his phone face down, the way people do when they are confident they will not need it. His lawyer arranged the papers efficiently. Two men who believed they were here for a formality, nothing more complicated than a signature on a clean page. The judge entered. A woman in her 50s, precise and unhurried. She reviewed the documents methodically, paragraph by paragraph, page by page. Daniel checked his watch once. His lawyer leaned over and said something low. Daniel nodded without really listening. I watched all of this quietly, my hands folded in my lap, my breathing slow and steady. I had waited 2 years for this moment. I could wait another 2 minutes. I had become very, very good at waiting. It happened on the 3rd page. Daniel's lawyer was reviewing the agreement one final time, a standard pre-signature review, when something made him stop. His pen paused. He read the line again, then the paragraph around it. Then he turned back to the previous page. His expression did not change dramatically. Lawyers are trained not to show alarm, but his posture changed. He straightened almost imperceptibly. He turned slightly toward Daniel. He leaned close and whispered. I could not hear the words, but I did not need to. I had written the document. I knew exactly which line had stopped him. I watched Daniel's face instead. The smile did not disappear suddenly. It cracked slowly, from the outside in, like ice that has been warm for too long and is only now beginning to realize it. His eyes moved to the page, then back to his lawyer. His lawyer pointed. His eyes moved back to the page. And something happened to his face that I had never seen in 15 years of knowing him. Real fear. Not frustration. Not annoyance. But fear. The face of a man who suddenly understands he's been playing a game without knowing all the rules. He grabbed the document. Started reading from the beginning this time. Actually reading the way he should have read it 3 weeks earlier when Patricia had placed it on the table and his lawyers had waved it through. His eyes moved fast, too fast, panicked. He flipped to the 2nd page. The 3rd. His lawyer reached over and pointed to a specific section near the bottom of page 4. Daniel read it twice. A 3rd time. His jaw tightened, his breathing changed. I could see it from across the table, the shallow, quickened breath of someone whose certainty has just dissolved. No, he said quietly. Just that one word. His lawyer said nothing, just waited. Daniel looked up from the papers. His eyes found mine across the table. And this time, he was not looking at me the way he had looked at me for the last several years. Like I was furniture, like I was background, like I was something easily dismissed. He was looking at me the way you look at someone when you realize, far too late, that you have badly underestimated them. I held his gaze, steady, calm, and free. I did not need to say a word. My eyes said everything. I see you, Daniel. I always saw you, and I planned for all of this. He tried. I will say that. He did not go silently. He turned to the judge, his voice carrying just a slight crack that someone who did not know him might not have noticed. Your Honor, I need more time to review this agreement. The judge looked at him calmly. You've had 3 weeks, Mr. Carter. The agreement was filed and acknowledged by your counsel. There are elements I wasn't fully briefed on. Were you represented by legal counsel during this process? A pause. Yes, he said. And you signed voluntarily, with full opportunity to seek clarification from that counsel? Another pause, longer this time. Yes, he said quietly. Then the agreement stands as executed. Simple. Final. Like a door closing on everything he thought he controlled. Daniel turned to his lawyer. Low, urgent words moved between them. His lawyer responded quietly but firmly. You waived the review period. You signed the liability acknowledgement. You declined the financial audit option. All of it is legally binding, Daniel. He sat back slowly. The man who had walked in so confident this morning was somewhere else now. What remained in that chair looked smaller, more human, more honest than he had been in years. The judge reviewed the final page, signed where required, and said words I had been waiting 2 years to hear. This matter is concluded. 4 words. The sound of the rest of my life beginning. I stood slowly. I smoothed my jacket. I picked up my bag. I did not rush. I did not look around to see who was watching. I did not perform relief or triumph for anyone. I simply stood and let the moment settle over me the way light settles on still water. Quiet, even, and real. Patricia walked beside me toward the door. She said nothing at all. Which was exactly right. Some moments do not need words. Behind me, Daniel was still speaking to his lawyer in low, urgent tones, trying to find a door that was no longer there. There was no door. He had locked it himself 3 weeks earlier when he signed his name without reading, because he was too proud to imagine that the woman he had dismissed had been 3 moves ahead of him all along. I did not turn around, not out of coldness, not out of satisfaction, but because the only direction that mattered now was forward. And forward felt extraordinary. Outside the courthouse, the air was cool and clean. I stopped for a moment on the steps and just breathed. Patricia stood beside me. She said quietly, "You knew exactly what you were doing the whole time, didn't you?" I thought about the right answer. I knew what reality was, I said finally. I just let him believe in something else until the moment it mattered. She smiled, nodded slowly. We walked down the steps together. Behind us, the courthouse doors opened. Daniel came out with his lawyer, who was still speaking quietly and urgently. Ava was waiting near the bottom of the steps. She had been smiling when she arrived. I had seen her from the window as I walked in. She was not smiling now. She looked at Daniel's face, and her expression changed. Confusion first, then concern, then something I recognized because I had felt it myself once. The specific fear of realizing the person you trusted is not who you thought they were. Daniel's lawyer spoke to her briefly, quietly, and carefully. She stepped back, just slightly. The way you step back when the ground shifts. I walked past them. I did not slow down. I did not make eye contact. I simply kept moving. Because I was done looking back. The weeks that followed were very quiet. Quiet in the way that only comes after years of noise you had stopped noticing. I arranged my apartment slowly. A bookshelf here. A plant by the window. A chair in the corner that was just for reading. Small things, but every one of them chosen by me. Only me. No one else's preference to accommodate. No one else's approval to wait for. I slept deeply every night. I ate what I wanted. I worked at the hours that suited me. I called the people I had lost touch with during the years when Daniel's world had slowly become the only world. Old friends, my sister, a cousin I had not spoken to in 4 years. They all said some version of the same thing. We missed you. And I understood only then how much of myself I had handed over gradually, not all at once, but piece by piece over 15 years, until there was almost nothing left that I could call entirely my own. I was getting those pieces back, one quiet day at a time. It was slow. It was simple. It was the most meaningful work I had ever done. Daniel's empire did not collapse all at once. It crumbled. Debt does not care about pride. It does not care about reputation. Neither does it care that you have a beautiful house and a company people admire from the outside and a lifestyle that photographs well. Debt simply waits with patience, inevitable, and completely indifferent to illusion. The calls started coming within weeks of the settlement. Banks and private lenders, investors who had been watching the numbers quietly and were no longer willing to be patient. Daniel answered them alone now. Ava left 2 months after the court date. No dramatic scene, no argument, just an absence that arrived one morning and did not leave. I learned this from a mutual friend, not because I was monitoring Daniel, but because some information travels on its own. I felt nothing dramatic when I heard it. No satisfaction, no sadness, just a quiet recognition that reality has a way of arranging itself into something honest, given enough time. The house he had fought so hard to keep, the one Ava had redecorated with such easy confidence, was now a liability in his name alone, with his signature beneath it. Exactly as he had chosen, exactly as he had signed for. People asked me many things during those months. Did I plan it from the beginning? No. I planned it from the moment I understood what the numbers actually meant and what Daniel was about to do with a marriage he had already privately ended. Did I enjoy watching it happen? No. There is no satisfaction in watching someone collapse. Even someone who hurt you. Even someone who discarded you without ceremony. The collapse of another person is not a victory. It is simply the consequence of choices made freely. Did I want revenge? I wanted something more durable than revenge. I wanted my life back. Revenge is about the other person. It keeps you tied to them, turned in their direction, measuring your success by their suffering. I did not want that. I wanted to face forward. I wanted to wake up in my own space, on my own terms, answerable to no one but myself. That is what I built. Not a trap for Daniel. A foundation for myself. He simply walked into the truth of his own financial reality. I had not created that reality. He did. Over years of borrowing, performing, and mistaking appearance for substance. I had simply ensured I was not standing in the building when it fell. I saw Daniel once, several months later. It was entirely by accident. A coffee shop near the accounting office where I had started consulting again. He was sitting alone at a corner table. He looked older, not aged in a dramatic, broken way, just quieter. The energy that used to fill every room he walked into was smaller now, more contained. He looked like a man who had spent several months learning the difference between what he thought he was and what he actually was. That is an education nobody enjoys, but most people become more real from it. He looked up and saw me. We looked at each other for a moment. Then he nodded. Just slightly. I nodded back. I ordered my coffee. I found a table on the other side of the room. We did not speak. We did not need to. Some conversations are finished long before anyone opens their mouth. Ours had ended in a courtroom on a Tuesday morning, when the truth finally arrived to say the things neither of us had been saying for years. I drank my coffee, read my documents, and left when I was ready. It felt like nothing dramatic. Just like peace. This is what I know now, on the other side of all of it. Truth does not need urgency. Truth does not need anger. It does not need to arrive loudly or with drama. Truth simply needs time. And time always delivers. I spent 15 years believing that love meant making yourself smaller so someone else could feel larger. I spent 2 years learning that patience is not the same as weakness. And I spent the months after the courtroom discovering what it means to belong to yourself completely. Daniel got everything he wanted. The house, the company, the assets, the liabilities, the full weight of a life built on borrowed credibility. And I got everything I needed. My peace, my clarity, and myself. If you are somewhere in the middle of a story like this, quiet and unseen and slowly disappearing, hear this clearly. Being underestimated when you are paying attention is not a disadvantage. It is the most powerful position in any room. The person watching carefully while everyone else celebrates, she already knows how it ends. She is simply waiting for the truth to arrive, and it always does. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed my story, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe so you never miss what comes next.